Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to our latest explainer. Now, usually we're breaking down science, history, or some interesting data trends. But today we are unpacking a terrifying paranormal investigation of a truly cursed, forgotten place. A place that literally burns its inhabitants alive. We're going to analyze the deeply chilling documented legend of Madhapur. It's a village that was quite literally erased by fire. So go ahead and grab a seat, maybe turn down the lights a little bit, and let's explore exactly how a typical summer heat wave morphed into an absolute supernatural nightmare.
To really understand this, we have to start with four friends: Neil, Ayarav, Sia, and Rajiv. They were absolutely desperate to escape this brutal summer heat wave, so they packed up their bikes and went looking for a fun adventure. Ayarav had heard these vague rumors about old temples and stepwells in a place called Madhapur. But here is the first major red flag, and it's a big one. This village, it didn't even exist on Google Maps. They drove completely off the digital grid. And you know when you drive into a place the world has actively erased, you don't find a relaxing getaway. Instead, they drove straight into a suffocating, unnatural heat that felt way less like the weather and a lot more like a trap snapping shut right behind them. Think about it. When you picture a normal summer village, you're probably imagining bustling streets, a warm breeze, people relaxing in shaded courtyards. Just life, right? But Madhapur was a graveyard. We're talking scorched trees, bone-dry wells, and homes reduced to absolute ruins. And above all of that, there was this eerie, totally dead silence. The friends noted that the heat here wasn't just hot, it actually felt alive. It felt like someone was standing right behind them, breathing heavily down their necks. And right there, in the middle of these ruins, they found a single, solitary figure. It was a mysterious old woman, just lying on a cot inside a broken-down hut.
The old woman just looked at them and delivered this incredibly chilling warning. She told them, Madhapur is no longer a place for the living. She then explained exactly what they had stumbled into, and it wasn't your standard ghost story. This was the curse of Rupavati. It's a paranormal anomaly where extreme summer heat actually manifests as a vengeful spirit. And this spirit, it turns living souls directly into ashes. Basically, anyone who stays, melts, or burns. So you're probably wondering, who exactly was Rupavati? Let's step back for a second and look at how this whole tragedy actually began.
Every curse has an origin story, right? For Madhapur, it started with a blistering, incredibly severe drought. There was this beautiful, kind-hearted village girl named Rupavati. She was actually about to be married, but she was literally dying of thirst, wandering from door to door just begging for a single drop of water. But instead of helping her, the villagers cruelly mocked her suffering while the wells completely dried up. Pushed way beyond human endurance under this blazing sun, Rupavati self-immolated, and as she burned, she screamed out a curse: "Just as I die in this heat, this village will burn every summer." It was an innocent bride pushed to the absolute edge, and her final words locked the entire village into an eternal cycle of fire.
So, knowing this terrifying history, the four friends are now understandably terrified. They realize it's getting dark, so they take shelter in this old, ruined mansion. Suddenly, the air grows completely dead, there's zero breeze, yet the doors start slamming violently all on their own. The friends shine their flashlights out into the pitch-black courtyard, and there she is, a ghostly girl with blazing red eyes and hair made of literal fire. Her voice just echoed through the stifling air with a chilling decree. The heat has come, and now you will all burn. Somehow, they survived the night, just completely paralyzed by fear. But as the sun finally rose, the true, unimaginable horror of Madhapur revealed itself. They frantically started searching the mansion for their friend Rajiv. But Rajiv didn't just run away. He didn't just disappear into the woods. Right there, in the exact spot where he had been sleeping, there was absolutely nothing left but a smoldering pile of human ash. The curse was entirely real, and it had just claimed one of their own.
Pure panic sets in. The remaining three, Neil, Arav, and Sia, sprint back to the old woman. She gives them what sounds like a desperate, almost impossible lifeline. She tells them they have to execute this frantic, highly dangerous ritual. First, they need to descend into a perilous, closed-off dry well. Next, they have to locate a hidden idol of the goddess down there. And finally, they need to touch it with just a single drop of pure water. But Rupavati's spirit, she wasn't going to let them off the hook that easily. As they ran toward the well, scorching paranormal winds whipped through the village. The heat was so intense that their clothes literally began to catch fire. Neil collapsed from the heat, but Sia, fighting through the actual flames, managed to climb down into the pitch-black well.
Down in the dark, Sia prayed for peace. She begged the mother goddess to cool the burning village, and she let that single drop of water fall right onto the idol. And instantly, the sky cracked wide open. Lightning struck out of nowhere. Rain began to pour down in absolute sheets, completely drowning out that supernatural heat. Those dry, burning winds shifted into a cool, green breeze. Up top, the old woman wept tears of joy. It was over. They had actually done it. They freed Rupavati. The surviving friends packed up whatever they had left and drove away, mourning Rajiv, but firmly believing they had finally, permanently broken the curse.
But here is exactly where the nightmare mutates in our explainer, because it begs a really terrifying question. What happens when you extinguish a fire, but you leave the ashes behind? You see, the friends left in a huge hurry, which makes sense, but they left Rajiv's ashes sitting there in Madhipur. Over the next year, the village actually started to repopulate. Families came back. It seemed totally safe. That is, until Neil, Arav, and Sia returned a year later to finally scatter Rajiv's ashes. The very second they stepped foot back into the village, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the newly restored temple.
The nightmare hadn't ended at all. It had mutated into something far more vicious. Things escalated terrifyingly fast. The temple priest suddenly collapsed unconscious. Remember that goddess idol that had saved them in the well? It was now discovered drenched in fresh blood. Every single morning, the villagers would wake up to find burning footprints scorched directly into the ashes on the temple's steps. And back at home, Arav had started having these horrifying, vivid nightmares of Rajiv just standing over him, trapped and burning. That ritual in the well, it hadn't solved the problem. It had merely paused it. When the priest finally woke up, he delivered a revelation that completely shifts our entire understanding of this haunting. He explained that yes, the water in the well had granted Rupavati peace, but it had awakened something far more ancient and deeply, deeply furious. He told them, she is not alone. From her ashes, a new spirit has risen. It was her mother, the mother who had been forced to stand by, helpless, and watch her innocent daughter burn to death under that brutal sun. So now, the friends realize they aren't dealing with a simple residual haunt anymore. The reality is twice as terrifying. They are facing two spirits. You see, the water had cooled the village physically, but no one had ever bothered to give Rupavati, or Rajiv for that matter, their proper respectful funeral rites. A mother's blinding rage had literally pulled her daughter back from the afterlife, because while the village had been cooled, the grief had never been processed. The mother's spirit declared that until her daughter's ashes were truly honored, every mother in the village would cry and every son would burn. They immediately realized their fatal mistake, and it required a completely different approach to fix. That first ritual, that was a physical exorcism. Using water to cool the idol and stop the heat was just putting a band-aid on a much deeper wound. Priest Vishrad realized what they actually needed was an emotional exorcism. They had to go out to the old crematorium in the dead of night. They had to offer a pure-hearted tribute, chanting specific mantras, not to fight or defeat the spirits, but to grant them true moksha, true spiritual liberation. The whole village had to collectively apologize. The priest led this massive purification ritual, and finally, a bright light broke through the dark sky and the two female spirits ascended. True peace at last. And for 2 blissful years, Madhipur thrived. The crops grew back. Children played in the streets. The friends felt like they had finally closed the book on this whole nightmare. Well, until summer returned 2 years later. Without any warning whatsoever, the temple incense suddenly burst into flames entirely on its own. The sky above Madhipur violently shifted to a deep, terrifying blood red. That supernatural, suffocating heat, it was back. But Rupavati and her mother were gone. They had moved on. So who on earth was causing the fire this time?
The answer to that question is the ultimate tragic twist of this entire explainer. The heat wasn't just coming from the air. It was radiating from a broken human soul crying out, "You gave me fire, but no memory. I burn with every soul that dies an incomplete death." It was Rajiv, their best friend. Because they had panicked and left his ashes behind during that first visit, his death was considered incomplete. He had been trapped in the purgatory of Madhipur, all this time slowly twisting into the exact same kind of monster that had killed him in the first place.
To save Madhipur, and more importantly, to save their friend's soul, Neil, Arav, and Sia had to face their deepest guilt in one final, intensely emotional confrontation. They went back to the old temple and sat in a geometric triangle to center the energy. Sia then had to create a very specific physical anchor. She mixed earth, water, and flowers into a single lamp and held it out toward the swirling, fiery apparition of Rajiv.
They knew they couldn't banish him with fear. They had to anchor his humanity. Sia looked right into the roaring flames and spoke the words, "You are not just a ghost. You were our friend."
The very moment she acknowledged his humanity, the raging winds just died down. The temple bells began to ring clearly all on their own. The air cooled, and Rajiv's spirit finally faded away into peace. Madhapar was officially saved. But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one really chilling thought. Yes, the villagers live in peace now, but they never ever fail to perform a small prayer every single summer when the heat peaks. Because while the air might cool down and the village might seem peaceful, when a paranormal fire burns that deeply into the soul, will the heat ever truly forget? Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. Keep learning, stay curious, and hey, maybe double check your maps before your next summer road trip.